Let's talk about the Sony 35mm f1.8. So a while ago I made a video comparing this lens to a Sigma and a Tamron 35mm, but I ended up keeping the Sony. I've been using it pretty much every single day on my Sony a7S III. I love it, but is it also the one you should buy? Let's find out. Okay guys, first of all this. Thank you. Thank you for all the support, but also for asking me questions in the comments. I'm always more than happy to help, and I know that I don't do a lot of these review videos, but if you guys ask me to make one, then, well, here it is. So keep asking me those questions, no problem. Okay, now back to the Sony 35mm 1.8. I've been using it for pretty much everything, photo and video, all my YouTube videos in the past few months. I'm also using it right now, it's set at f2.2. And I really like it. The build quality of this lens is really good. It's not up there with the most expensive G Master lenses, but it's sturdy, made out of metal. I feel like what you pay is what you get. Nothing more, but also definitely nothing less. It's also not too big and definitely not too heavy. It just feels good. The focus ring is really smooth, and also the autofocus motor works smoothly and silently. The only thing I'm not sure about is weather sealing. In the specifications it says it's weather sealed, but I find different things on the internet. I think it's only medium weather sealed, meaning it can take some dirt, dust or rain, but try to find cover as soon as possible. Overall though, mounted on my Sony a7S III, it feels like the perfect package. Then the focal length, 35mm, is one of my favorite focal lengths, and of course it's subjective, but you can do a lot of things with a 35mm. It's a great all-round focal length, and the aperture of 1.8 will get you nice blurred out backgrounds. Those blurred out backgrounds also look really good. The quality is good. And of course it will help you in low light situations. One thing maybe, it is a 35mm, that's not super wide, but a 35mm does distort faces a little bit. So the closer I get, the more my face will be stretched. It's not that bad, but keep it in mind. And that's just because it's a 35mm, that's not because it's the Sony 35mm. All 35mm distort faces a little bit. So I wouldn't use it as a dedicated portrait photography lens. It's an all-rounder. But I definitely like this lens for both video and photos. Autofocus works well and smoothly in video mode as well as in photo mode. There's almost no focus breathing, so I've been using it for photography, all my thumbnails, cinematic video, B-roll, commercials. I'm gonna say it again, it's a true all-rounder. But then, image quality. Okay, look, for video, there's no problem. I don't like my videos super sharp anyway. For photography, a few things. First of all, I've been using this lens on my Sony a7S III. 12 megapixels. So if this lens is 100% sharp or just 90% sharp, I'm not gonna notice that in 12 megapixel photos. But I've seen other review videos and everybody says that the sharpness is pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. Again, what you pay is what you get. There's also some purple fringing at the widest apertures, but is it worth it then to go for the more expensive 1.4 version or another more expensive 35mm that will give you better sharpness and almost no purple fringing? Well, that depends. I'm using this lens for video and for web photography, social media, Instagram, my website, and for that, it's perfect. Even if you have a 50 megapixel camera, but you only shoot for web, no one will see that it's not 100% sharp or that there's some purple fringing. So in that case, it's totally not worth it to pay a premium price for a little bit of extra sharpness and no purple fringing or almost no purple fringing. Or even for that 1.4, 2/3 of a stop extra. Now, would I use this lens on a high megapixel camera for an important photography project for which I'm gonna make super large prints? No, because when you make large prints, you will notice the lack in sharpness, even if it's just a little bit, and also that purple fringing will show. So if you're not sure whether to buy this lens or a more expensive 35mm, you have to ask yourself a few questions. Do you only shoot for web and social media? Then it's not worth it because you'll pay for extra sharpness that no one will notice. Another thing you can ask yourself is, are you shooting at f1.8 all the time and you feel like you need a wider aperture? Well, then you're gonna have to look at a 1.4, of course. For me, for what I'm using it for, I don't want to pay extra for 2/3 of a stop extra. I'll just bump up my ISO and I have no problems shooting in low light. So I would say this is a great lens for hybrid shooters, videographers, and for photographers who shoot for social media and web. If you're a die-hard photographer and you make large prints, I'm talking 30, 40-inch prints, then I would consider going for a more expensive one that will give you almost perfect image quality, because that's when you'll notice the difference. For most of you watching, this 35mm will be perfect. And a 35mm is definitely a focal length I recommend having in your camera bag. But seriously, when it comes to perfect sharpness or 1.4, ask yourself and be honest with yourself. Do you really need it? Or do you want it? You know, there's a big difference. When I started my career, I wanted a lot of things, but I didn't need them. And now I only buy the things that I really need. Of course, in the end, you decide what you do with your money. I'm not here to tell you what to do or what to buy. I'm just giving you some advice, my honest opinion, honest advice, and I hope it helps. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.